call the 2022 draft budget, our third work session to order on October 20th at 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we start with Public Works, I wanted to provide some information about things and learning along the way. Regarding health insurance, the premiums, as you know, a 10% increase has been applied until we know the actual amount. One thing that I've learned is when the new insurance was put into place in 2020 and 2021, there was a provision for 1 month free. That saved the city $250,000 each year. However, 22, that is not the case. So we do not get the 1 month free. It doesn't change the health care that you have in the budget, but I did want you to know that. I know for me, I've been constantly questioning why is it so high. Let's run the numbers again, and that's something that that I've learned and wanted to pass on to you about the health insurance. So I think with that, we'll just go and get started with Public Works. And we're starting with streets. I did provide you a printout because along the way, a few things are changing. One item that is changing, last meeting I reported that the general fund was in balance. The general fund is no longer in balance. It's short by about $109,000. We'll talk about that further as we move along with jail, but as we move along further. And then I do have a couple of ways to balance it and still working through that. So that's why now, unfortunately, you're seeing these. And then for the November 1st budget, you'll have again a full budget with all departments together, a full overview like you had the first time. Oh, Madam Mayor, if I may add, another mechanism to balance the budget again is in 2022 I took out all motor pool except for in the enterprise funds because they do have the funds to support that. Again, I have a couple of ideas to balance the general fund, and that may mean bringing back the motor pool funds, at least a portion of them. So I just want to give you kind of an overview where we are on general fund, and then of course we will be talking about it again.
Okay, so just to clarify, the budget is now short by $109,000. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
It is.
And that's including none of the
Motor pool.
motor pool is budgeted in the general fund.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right.
All me? All right.
Take it away.
All right, Public Works is all balanced, so we can use the...
Well, parts of it. Parts are not. And parts are not. So.
I thought we could just flip the page there. As you've seen on here, a couple differences is putting snow and ice and streets personnel funds together. It's a little hard to kind of get that figured out, but it's the personnel costs alone. Did you want to add something more?
Yes, so on where Public Works, the first page says streets, all of general fund Public Works is in this, says streets. At the very back is a summary of what Doug is just speaking about, so that the snow and ice personnel was moved to streets, and here's a summary of it, so that
So this is the main page, and then these sweep up into this main page. They're not in addition to, they're pulling out the main front page?
yes and no. So
Okay.
So streets, I'm just gonna, streets is a standalone. At the top, you'll see the streets and numbers.
Yeah.
So it's a standalone. Snow and ice is standalone. However, snow and ice salaries are now in streets. So the back page reflects that.
Okay.
City shop standalone, city hall standalone. They're all within the Public Works department, but these are standalone. How would I just call that? Standalone budgets, but divisions. Standalone divisions.
Under the
Thank
Public
you.
Works. Okay. Okay.
All right.
All
Back
clear?
to you.
Okay. So on the Public Works, I'm back on the page that says at the top, General Fund Streets, 01,000, 1310. Is that first page on the packet, I believe, that she put out just now. the streets with the snow and ice personnel budgets, we went through, the reason for doing that was that every year kept being different. Snow and ice, obviously you don't know how much snow you're gonna get or how much ice you're gonna get. It's the same personnel streets that does snow and ice. And so that was the reasoning for, instead of adjusting the budget every year back and forth and, oh, we had a big year, we better add more from streets to snow and ice. And then we have a light year and next budget it gets added back the other way. So the streets personnel budget, with them doing the same work, that would be included now, streets and snow and ice for just personnel. So if we drop down to the non-personnel costs, there's some highs and lows. We tried to go through all of our line items, try to save where we could.
So can I ask a question first?
Sure.
Okay, so when in that general fund streets, the proposed total personnel cost is $553,000. And then when I add into, oh, yeah,
And
that's
the-
my problem.
The back page has all the previous,
Yeah.
so each year what it would have been had it been added together. So the very last page has that information.
Oh, okay, the very last page has that. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So then, when you look at that,
There is an increase over 21, so together, street, snow, and ice in 2021 amended budget was 472,
Yeah.
402, and in 22, the 553, 469.
so again, that's where we're saying, okay, so that's an $81,000 increase. So that's where you're saying the 10% healthcare, the 18%, the 22% PERS.
And then step increases are included in there. And then the division of the 1 month free of the health insurance that we had in
Okay.
20 and 21 is now in here as well.
So
So
now
it's
that's
divided
like-
throughout the whole budget. but that's in
So
there as
that's
well.
where though we can see, like just for posterity, looking backwards, it would be good to have notes in the budget. And we've talked, okay, sorry that I interrupted, I just am trying to wrap my brain around it. Sorry, Doug, I
Oh,
keep
that's okay.
messing with your flow, go ahead.
Oh, I gotta know what flow you had there, so. As we're going through the budget, we get down to the bottom, on the main streets page, and you can see those totals. As you look at the 22 proposed is 802 for total cost, 802,000, where you go back over 2 lines to the 2021 amended, and it's 642. It kind of goes the opposite. That does include the snow and ice. When I went ahead to the next page for snow and ice, and on the bottom grabbed the 299 total for the amended budget, and then the 139 for the new budget for snow and ice, and added those to our new proposed and our amended. Actually shows last year's amended budget at 941,602, and the new proposed budget for streets and snow and ice together is 941,487. So there was some personnel costs and different things that went up, but there were also both departments things that came down. So on a total, if the 2 pages, that's pretty close on what they are. And if you have any questions on what things go to, where things are at, I mean, I can go through them line by line, but most of them are pretty standard on what we're using and why, and you know what.
You have, I mean, so one item that jumps out at me is, so operating supplies, at least in snow and ice, that's pretty big compared to other departments' operating supplies, 7215. You know, between streets and snow and ice, let me make sure I'm on the right line. You know, it's $100,000, which is, you know, a jump from other departments. What's included in that would be different?
So in operating supplies for snow and ice, and you're right, it's pretty big. You look back the different years and you
Yeah.
can see the 100,000 different things. Those are typically a really bad sand year. We didn't have a lot of
Sand.
snow.
Okay.
We had to purchase an awful lot of sand to keep going.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's grater blades, calcium chloride,
Okay.
and salt that goes with the sand.
Great, where other people are buying paper and staplers,
We're buying big trailer loads of goods and then just dump trucks and dump trucks of
Okay.
sand.
Thank you. Are
Sure.
there any other questions within streets and snow and ice? Go ahead.
Were there CARES Act grant funds applied to the operating supplies of snow and ice for 2021?
And then, so, you know, I remember one year when, we were not cutting driveways after the snow plows. So does this budget take into account cutting those driveways in after plowing?
We're still planning to
Okay.
go ahead and remove berms from driveways, and we'll do it quickly as we can.
Yeah.
In town, we still do have the grader that we put the wing on, the new grader that was on the left side that clears the intersections much quicker. On a big snow, you're still gonna have some spillover, but it really worked great last time, and we didn't have to have a loader here all the time. That opened the loader up to go through the neighborhoods a little quicker, another loader to help clean those out. I'm sure we'll get some calls as we go. I mean, it seems like we're trying to plow as quick and early as we can, but sometimes that plow's right, somebody who's trying to get out to work, so. But it's winter time, we're all trying to get things done the best, and we encourage them to call us at Public Works. If they think they got left a berm or something, call us, we'll let them know where they're at, or we can run and get it. We've missed one here or two, here and there we do, and we'll go back and catch them real quick, so.
Okay. And then I guess within this budget, is there anything operationally that you're planning on changing or taking away that might not be reflected in these numbers, but that as we're looking at the budget, we need to be aware of?
In the streets budget, we're pretty good status quo, the streets, snow and ice. We really depend on weather, and there's a lot of things that can go into what our overtime is, or what we hope that we don't have to do much for overtime. I mean, ideally, we get it out, get it going. We have our new snow blower unit should be showing up this next month that goes on the new loader. We may have to start the season depending on, I'm hoping we don't, but we start with the old blower and get it going and load trucks with that one until we get the new one come in.
Okay.
So, but that's already included in our pricing, and we've already approved those numbers for the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can move on then. City shop would be the next one. And please, if you do have questions, just wave me, stop me, whatever we gotta do, thank you. I'd be glad to answer whatever questions may come up with it. Like you guys, I'm trying to look at, I think they're the same, pretty much. The new laydown looks pretty close to what I had got earlier today, so if I say a number that doesn't jive with what you have, just let me know, but we should be good. Shop is not a ton of changes. We went through again line by line looking for ways we could reduce. There was a lot of things in the shop. We pretty much just status quo on them. I mean, costs were coming up. We show right now on utilities. I mean, it's 20,000 right now year to date, and here we go into the main season. So, you know, those are the things we really try to see what we can do to keep it down a little more. We did drop a little bit on the safety equipment we had listed in there. The safety equipment, we came down from 1,500 to 1,000. Just there's some coding things too that sometimes we may have coded our safety equipment from the shop, somehow got coded into streets, because I see a 0 there, which just doesn't seem right. We have some safety stuff we put in there. So we'll check that, but we brought that down 500. We came across on several things. The one that looks like we went up on, we had an amended budget. I'm not sure how that came in last year of 4,900, and we brought that back up looking at the averages and going back where we've been on our maintenance and repair. We moved that to 15,000, and then we left the small tools equipment pretty much the same on the next one. So I mean, really there's some that went up and down, but we stayed fairly close. We're looking at your total expenditures. The big hit looks like from personnel up above came up over 100,000 for the different costs of what we had allocated, or not 100,000, I'm sorry, 70,000, 75,000 for what we had allocated last year, and a lot of that is the differences in salaries, the differences in the health insurance, and you can see those numbers, how they came up.
And was this a department that got COVID funding for some of the HR costs, personnel costs?
Not that I know of.
Very little. But we're gonna get you a comprehensive list like we
Okay.
talked about.
Yeah, I don't think we were picking up much of that at all, if any. And so shop costs,
Oh,
you know,
there's just a quick question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I recall there being discussion of the generator operators, linemen being put or funded in city shop or working part-time city shop. Did that ever happen, or they're in the electric? Those two
they are
positions?
only in the electric. They're in a totally different union. Back years and years ago, there was a separate, or actually a combined. We had all the electric people, all the public works, everybody crowded into this shop over here on 6th Avenue. At the time, they were all under the umbrella of public works. Then as the electric, a big division of that, then moved to the warehouse and over with the generators. There was some training issues that two of the mechanics went over and became part of the electric area. We never did replace those two on this side, but they certainly took a ton of the work with them over there. So the work they were doing here, they're still doing over there. We didn't gain any personnel in that move, it was just a split. And so we looked at different things, and I know that past finance directors or director had wanted to try to combine that somehow. But trying to combine it, you still have that same amount of work that was already divided. It's a tough one to combine.
Other questions? Go ahead, please.
Okay. Move from shop to, we have three different small budgets for some building repairs, some issues we have. The first one is the City Hall budget. City Hall is the only one that lists any personnel costs in it. The only personnel or expenditures that we have at all for any of the buildings is listed in City Hall, and that's for the custodian that does City Hall and annex, and and there's limited areas that he does, and also does the snow removal and light maintenance outside. So that's the only personnel issue or costs in the next three small budgets. Most of them are just light maintenance that we do. We do the replace air filters, we work on the boilers, we do miscellaneous work around the buildings. A lot of the extra work, some of it that we've been picking up, we had 2 years ago, we had 2 custodians, and so that one was dropped. So we're down to 1, so he's pretty stretched on what he does. We try to fill in where we can, but we're really pulling personnel from our streets or from our water sewer areas off of those jobs, bringing them in to do other ones. But still got to get done. So we're trying to do with what we can. It's just we're kind of using some of that fund sometimes. Say the street department guys come over and fix something here. So, but right now, that, like I said, that's our only budgeted area in this. The one thing I did see on the City Hall budget that really popped up was the fire alarm system is budgeted in here for next year for $60,000. The only fire system that's in here is just for the elevator. They put a small thing in to get that elevator to get it to code, but we need a better fire alarm system, or a fire alarm system in here. We know it's an old building, we know there's stuff that just didn't have it, so we need to do an add-on. 60's a number to throw out there. I don't know if it'll come in a little less or a little more. So you'll see that here in the next year, that'll go out to bid and to get an adequate fire alarm system in here. So, but it just hasn't been, and this building is built 68 or 65, I don't remember right in there. So that's the big one that jumps out at me on this budget. There's a few different things that I can't really control as far as the insurance going up and but we do use contract services, and We dropped just a little bit on the contract services, but that's the elevator, that's when we need the specialty work done for boilers and things like that we can't get to. We'll have to call a plumber in. And so that'll follow with the next two with the community center, which the community center is the senior center with the TYC on the next floor down and so on. The main thing we do over there is the elevators, and right now Parks and Rec and the senior center does most of the maintenance, the cleaning and those things over there on that particular building. So our costs are not too high. We've put in different things for contract services in the past to maybe even get some, like an awning engineered over the backside and some different things that they needed in there, but it's fairly minimal what we do on those, and you can see it by the budgets. And it's the same on the annex. They're both roughly $25,000 total, and the numbers are pretty close to what we had before on it. And I'd answer questions on those three buildings before we get to water sewer if you have them.
How many employees are in this section that we were just given?
In Public Works? Yeah, that's the main Public Works section. There's, and I'll combine just a little because we have 4 in water and sewer, which is coming next. So
Right.
all of Public Works, we have the 4 water sewer, then we have 4 in the streets, 1 mechanic, and 1 admin, and myself. So 12
And
total.
that includes the janitor
Mhm.
that is doing all this other stuff?
Correct.
So in this packet that we have right now, there's 7 full-time employees.
8, if you count me,
Gotcha.
8 in there.
Thank you.
I think I counted that right.
Any other questions? Okay. We reserve our right to ask questions later. I'll just say that. It's a lot to mull over at the first sitting, but that was very comprehensive. So now on to water, wastewater.
Okay.
Great.
I'll make sure I'm on the first
we have
page that
those
you
for-
guys are on.
Yeah, it's, so it starts in our packet on page 89, but will these be updated or the same?
There's been an update to the cover page. The
Okay.
cover page includes the transfer to not previously. I also did a breakdown on the packet
82,
that
right
you
there. Is
have.
that the
There's
same?
also a combination of salaries between
I said page 82 in the
general revenue and expenditures now includes water salaries. And you'll see, actually see the wastewater too, but the combo is here so that you can see the cost for
comparison.
previous years.
Okay, thank you. And we have to continue to remember that the 2021, so is that an amended budget or this expenditures to date? So that is an amended budget now.
It is an amended budget. 2021 is amended, and these are the budget numbers.
Okay.
And it must have been in the mid-year budget cycle that the budget was amended.
So it would have been the base 21 budget plus the amendments and appropriations throughout the year.
Okay,
All
because,
inclusive.
okay. So you just dropped the 2021 year-to-date actuals,
On your,
which is fine.
on this year.
Oh, on the last one.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
okay,
on the, I didn't do,
that's fine.
I didn't do year-to-date salaries.
Yep, that's just checking. Okay.
So, yeah, thank you. Are we all looking at this, the handout one?
Yep.
Okay, so start with the first page, so just want to make sure we're all in the same spot there. Get back stuff organized here. All right, water revenues, expenditures. The first page is a general, just gives you the total outline of what we've got there. Right now, we've, go to the bottom, it shows revenue over expenditures, less depreciation and motor pool. And you show basically our net revenue on that. For the water system, we're undertaking the water sewer rate study, and you guys have been hearing that for now over a year and a half, that we've been trying to get that water sewer rate study. And as we get new finance folks and we've got new city managers, and as this has gone through, it's drug out a little bit. I did talk to the rate study guy today again. He's ready for us as soon as we're done with budget stuff or ready to figure it out. He's ready to get back into it to see where we need to be. And there'll be some comprehensive reports and some good discussions that we had here already on where the water rates should be and the sewer rates should be. And there's definitely some big costs that we have coming up with water and sewer. And the wastewater costs, we have permits that we're just finishing the SMIC permit right now, and the Lowell Point permit starts to get renewed here in December, and it's usually a 2 to 3 months to get the thing. You got to turn it in and go back through. Right now, DEC has been just the permit itself. When I started 5 years ago, it was $500 each. We're over $5,000 each right now for the permits. That's just the state passing on different costs as we go back and forth. So, but the DEC costs for those permits keep rising, and on the wastewater especially, they are adding more things to test for. They're looking to add all disinfection on the effluent as it goes out, doing a different disinfection. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it certainly isn't cheap. It's something that's going to be a big cost, and when they require it, they require it. So those are things we really need to be aware of when we do this, finish up this rate study, the different costs we have. Our water costs have been actually pretty good as far as, we've got a few big things coming up with the tanks that we need to do. We have the 200,000 gallon tank up on the hill. That's just, it really needs to be replaced, but those are great things when you talk about infrastructure, any of this money coming out. We're certainly applying, trying to get those grants to do those so they don't impact our rates. So keep your fingers crossed on those. That makes a huge difference if we can get both water and wastewater. I keep hearing they have funding for those, but we're all competing, not only with just our own state, but with across the country. So we're hoping to do something with those, so as we have these increases in costs, that we're able to at least not add in a bunch of infrastructure if we could get those. So I'll go into the
Here's a
water.
question
Oops,
real
go ahead.
I know this has been asked many times, but could you explain hydrant rentals? Who rents the hydrants?
I could probably do it better next time I see you as we go through. I was just asked that just tonight to go through. We've gone through different things on the hydrant rentals, and it's been through every administration, every budget through here. We charge for hydrant rental. I believe it's the cost that the Public Works puts in the hydrants, takes care of the hydrants, does all the maintenance on the lines, and charges for the hydrants as they're used, or a certain amount to the fire department. So we're charging each other. How does that work? That's a discussion that we are having.
I know it was asked previous years too. And
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that's not been there. It's not a new thing, but it's been there for as long as I know. So talking about it, I think it's a good idea.
It's between departments.
Correct.
Yeah, so where does it come out of?
So the fire department pays $132,000 to the water.
Okay, so that's in their budget then?
Correct.
There should have been.
It's under
one.
their utility line.
Okay, that's pretty much.
And
what's
that
in
is
the notes.
something that I did just ask Doug about, and we're gonna research that more. It
We
does
should be able to
make
double it
a lot
this year.
of sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make, to me, to charge the general fund for something like that, but we'll talk more.
Thank you.
Correct, thank you. That's a good question on there, because it is something that comes up now and then.
And Doug, doesn't the hydrant rental also include when, like businesses and stuff need to tap into the hydrants? We bill them for it for their usage?
Well, that would be a hydrant rental revenue, so that's, the biggest thing is on there. We'd have to just go through what do we charge the fire department? Like I said, it was a quick question here tonight. We do get rental income from bigger jobs that are using our hydrants, that we put a meter on it, then we charge them. We charge them a daily rental on the hydrant, plus we charge them per water. So that's probably a big chunk of this, and like I said, I just kind of, that question just hit me, so I could get you a much better answer soon.
So then we could reduce the general fund side since there's revenue on the water side. We'll
What's
talk
that?
tomorrow.
What else?
I opened a can of worms.
What?
What's covered under the special contracts?
Are you on the second page, Mayor?
Yeah, water general revenue expenditures, under the revenue. What's covered under those special contracts that people pay you for?
Oh, that's Stuart Fisher,
Oh, okay.
Icicle. Right, Sam? You might have to answer that for me.
Yes, you're correct.
That ain't good.
I see, it's their water contract.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question, thank you.
So, you know, most of those, like I said, line by line, we went down through these, so I really would invite questions if you have them. You can see on the personnel costs, it did jump, it's a pretty good jump, but that does include the SMIC water salaries. It's not a huge thing, but we also have you know, all the increases and the things will go in there. You'll see on water and wastewater and streets, and we've already covered the streets, but the part of the thing that got voted in with the union contract was a more standby. It's a 2 hour instead of a 1 hour, so that certainly adds up as you go through the year. So
This is sort of not a great question. What are the SMIC water salaries? Who is that?
it's just dividing up some of the salaries, and that's why they're combined in with this now. But there should be something, and we'll have to, that's something to be talking about as we develop maybe in SMIC. That'll be a discussion we'll have to have as things happen over there. Do we need to at some point separate those costs? Because the SMIC costs for the sewer and the water over on that side are certainly a little higher than what they would be here. And to be able to capture that cost from those customers, right now it's a level. All of Seward, including SMIC, pays those same rates. At some point, we may have to look at doing something different there.
Right.
So right now, the personnel costs, we have to, over the years, just put something in there to show that, I mean, we do have personnel over there daily. You know, it might just be a quick one, but there's definitely stuff to do over there we have to be checking on and going through it, so.
Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Where in the revenues can you see the transfer in for the water that is being used in campgrounds?
So that when they do the year-end transfers, that's a transfer one department. And Sam might have to correct me, but I believe it's being counted as a revenue through the campgrounds first. Then they transfer out that amount to us. And I saw it on the first one, but it is something that gets transferred over, so.
Yeah, because it might not show it, but I thought we figured out it was $39,000.
Right.
But it doesn't. Water.
And it should be a fairly easy thing to find. It's just the number of RVs per night times $1.50 is made it very easy as far as
No, I don't
labor.
think the council member's asking about the calculation, just
Oh,
where
okay.
it shows up on the
Oh, where it
revenue.
is here, okay.
Yeah.
Is
that correct?
in the utility bill?
No, so that's separate,
Okay.
and that's actually something that we need to add to this.
Okay.
To transfer in.
So should it be on the first page? Is that what you
So
were just saying?
it's not on the water side, it's on the wastewater side.
Okay.
And it's not a revenue, it's a transfer. It's the revenue in the general fund and the campground department, and then we do a transfer from the general fund to the sewer fund, wastewater, for 16,000, for what
Oh, 'cause
she's
it's-
asking about. So it's not a
No, not
revenue
the
listed as a revenue, it's in the transfer schedule.
Not the pump station, you're talking about,
Water. We're talking about the same thing, right?
no,
You
he's
talking
talking
about
about
water or
pump station.
wastewater?
Water.
Okay,
Like they use water.
so that's on their utility bill.
Right. Are you talking about the 16,000?
No,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Actual water usage at the campground.
So water usage at the campground is paid through utility bills, so it'd be on the expense side
So it,
of the campgrounds in the general fund. And then it would show up as water revenue.
Yeah,
Where
where
is
is that?
So it would just be
Small service or
small
large
general service, yeah.
Small general service.
So are you saying then the campground receives a water bill and that it's paid
Yes.
into small general service?
Correct.
And we do have a different, when we get to wastewater, we do have a different calculation for the,
Pump station.
For the pump station. It's been increased and there's a formula for that.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
they're
I
just counted as
misunderstood
a
what she was asking. So yeah, it would be under small general service.
Just as a
revenue.
customer
Yeah.
revenue? Okay.
And
Go
you
ahead.
said that was 39,000?
No, that was, I think, the pump
That's for,
station.
That
that's
was
the
the
pump
wastewater.
station, and that's for wastewater.
So it sounds like I caused the confusion, but we got there.
So. Okay.
Because is it metered?
No.
For,
never
for
thought that.
water,
Yeah.
let's make sure we're back on the same. Water over there is listed as the separate charges for your abbreviation,
They are not meter, they're ERUs.
ERU, thank you. How can I not remember that one? They have different ERUs, or they're charged per spigot, per whatever they have on that one, and that'd be a question I'd have to go through with Park. But that is part of our program coming up with the water rate study, is to meter all these. So then they will be metered, yes. Any, as we go through water, I know we've kind of just touched as we went through it, and there's, like I said, several pages of these things to go through. Did anything, question on anything as we went down it, any other, before we switch to wastewater?
And so it looks like you're budgeting pretty close to 2021 numbers,
Correct.
with just a little bit of an increase. Except this, small general service. Yeah, just
For the increase in the revenue, the CPI was applied to that.
okay.
The CPI. What is the CPI this year?
1.2 again.
Any questions with that?
Okay. So switch to wastewater.
And so again, the cover sheet is on the front. Also, what you will see next time is the transfer that is listed on the transfer schedule will actually be on this cover sheet, and it is the transfer from the campground to the wastewater, and that amount has been recalculated, and it is 39,000 that will be transferred. 39,000, a little bit more than that. I have the exact amount, but that's what will go on to this transfer page.
Okay.
And the same thing for the salaries, the last page shows the amount. For the combo for general and SNF.
For SMIC and general.
Yes.
Yeah, salaries just across the board. I mean, I hear us talking about the explanation, but the jump, it just looks massive.
We did give them massive indication pay them.
I mean, the
That's
union,
not-
yeah.
And is that, are you talking the jump in personnel costs or in?
Yeah, the jump in the personnel costs.
Okay. Yeah, and, yeah, those are numbers that are pulled from finance on, basically it's the different union contracts, and we don't have any extra personnel, water and wastewater together, just have the 4 guys. We do transfer a little bit of my salary to Every's department, and also of our admin. We transfer part of her salary to each one. But really, we don't have, when you figure you have 2 guys doing the sewer and 2 guys doing the water, for both in town and SMIC, it's pretty amazing they're able to do what they can do with it.
Yeah.
with that. But we don't have any extra personnel, if that was a question
No,
on it.
I just think it's just all those notes we keep talking about every time, why the difference?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a big budget. I mean, this is just a part of it for you guys. Yeah, Riz?
Go ahead.
Your salary is split between these three packets, right? Did you say you and admin?
Yeah, there's split between water, wastewater, shop, and streets. And I believe mine is just the three, and I think Kirsten's is got all four.
Yours is all four as well.
Is mine all four?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I looked through these budget numbers and went through them myself as you're trying to look through, and when Jeanette and I went through and Stephen to go through, we just, actually Jesper was here, we went through how do we save and what places can we, and we tried to make cuts where we could, and also be aware that, oh man, we need to add some there, so we did some back and forth on our expenses in every department. And I think it's the same as we go through our water and wastewater. There's generally not a lot of big things in there. Now, the one thing I see that jumps out on the wastewater, if you go to that's the revenue budget, so revenue and expenditures, and it's got at the top one says 7016. The first thing for heating fuel is the page I'm on. I don't have a page number on it, but in the packet. If you come down just a little bit, our operating supplies, year to date, we're quite high over what we budgeted last year. So it's just trying to work through those operating supplies. It varies, but they have gone up a little bit this year, and our biggest increase, we really need to look at this again. The increase for this year is the amount of treatment we have to do at Low Point. We're really trying to stay on top of that Low Point and not let it get back to any part of the issue we had last time.
So are you thinking that the 13,000 will be enough?
I think we should talk about that, because we may have to work on that, and I didn't have a chance to talk to Jeanette more about that one yet. So that's definitely one we need to look at, because the reason it went up is that cost.
Well, I know we're gonna hear more about that Monday night also, from the engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, and those will be the costs of where it is, what we're doing, so it should be a good presentation, and then we can work forward from there.
Any questions?
And if you have further questions, I was asked to just stick around too, so I'll stay here if you think of something afterward, and try to answer whatever you can.
You know, I guess again, we're looking at numbers, but I guess my question would be, for the customers, will the customers see anything different in the service provided by either one of these utilities?
Shouldn't be any changes in service. Everybody should have the service. The only change that I could hope for is a good change if we could get some infrastructure to extend utilities. It would be so awesome to just put it through to whatever we could get. That'd make a big change, but it wouldn't change everybody else's service. Our main service, if there is an issue with water, is just that tank to get it. It's the old 200,000 gallon tank, and it needs to be gone, and we would put in a 400,000 or 500,000, which just gets us really good capacity for the ships and everything else as they come in and do a big draw.
Is there any projected increase in revenues for water and wastewater in residential because of the extra reimbursement program money that we've distributed for, there's a handful of, I was just at P&D last night, and I was fourplexes and triplex full homes.
Might be a question. That I don't know on those extra funds where they're coming in or out.
I don't think that our short-term finance director put any additional revenue in residential. She just applied the 1.2%. So,
CPI.
yeah, the CPI. So we could revisit that.
I'd just be curious what we're looking at, because I think that was the whole intention of the programs in hopes that it brings in more revenues.
And with the internal audits, if there was underbilling happening, if there needs to be an adjustment there or overbilling,
Right.
we should probably be looked at. Might be too much for this first year. We might have a better idea in a year.
And I would think we may, whether we're level or whether we actually maybe even have an increase a little bit, there were several that were being underbilled. So as of January 1st, that'll be the correction, I believe, is when it goes in, right? So the January 1st, so then they'll pay, if they had a 3-inch meter and they were only paying for a 1-inch meter. It's not a huge jump, but it's something to add in there. Just, just correct is where it should be, right? Whatever it is, that's what they should be paying, and that's where we want to get to with all of it too.
And I put an update in my CMR for the internal audit with numbers on overages and underages. So,
Okay, I haven't looked at that yet. Thank you.
yeah.
So before we move on from Public Works, are there any comments from the public? Are there any questions or comments?
Not on this one, it seemed, just on my head.
Well, if we're ready, does anyone need a break? We'll go into the police jail, and then I'll open it up for comments again after that, if that sounds good. Thank you, Doug. Lots of hard work. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's hope for the right amount of snow.
Let's add them out.
I
Yeah,
know.
I was just gonna say, no.
Well, but then we'll have to sand and salt, right?
You're right,
So
you're
it's
right. Sometimes that
somewhere
rain
in
is
between.
pesky too, isn't it?
So the police budget,
Yes.
the reason why I reprinted and updated is because I have removed all of motor pool. There is also request for police incentive, and that has been removed, so the dollar amount has changed, and that's why you have updated information. You'll notice on the jail page, when you get to that, it also has how much has been underfunded each year, each of the last 5 years.
Chief, we'll turn it over to you. Right off the high of getting your CUP for the city animal shelter approved.
Yeah, I had to work
Making
so
it
hard
2
at
for
that.
2.
Okay, I'd like to lead off tonight with the police department budget, which will be the first page of the laydown for us. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is 7009 contracted services. This is going to be one of the biggest changes for the police budget. The reason for this is I noticed we were paying for items which we have contracts for from other line items. And I wanted to locate them all in contract services where they should be. It'll make it easier for us to get the billing right and code and all that. As a result of this, you'll notice that some of the other line items have been reduced by quite a bit. So as I pull those things out and get them situated where they should be, then that'll change those. As some examples of what these contracts are, I'll start with the very biggest one, which is our Axon contract, and this is our body cameras. It's our digital evidence storage. It's our tasers, and that's a pretty expensive one. We also have Motorola service contract. We have I've put in 2 contracts that are specific for training for the dispatchers. Those are police legal sciences and priority dispatch. Those both provide scenario-based training for the dispatchers, and gets them continuing education credits so that they can actually be certified as public safety communicators, which is something new for us. Our computer-aided dispatch and report management system, Omnigo, is another contract, and my last example is we have a contract for forensic computer investigation tools. So, you know, it just makes up a lot of different contracts, and it'll also encompass any additions to those contracts that we'd like to make in the future to continue to improve the technologies that we've put in. And just stop me if there's any questions. So the next one that I'd like to direct you guys to is 7018, that's towing. That's something that we haven't done before. I asked for that to be added. I'd like to bring towing back in. It's something that we've tried very hard to avoid now for a very long time, mainly because of cost, but also because of sort of just difficulties in having a service provided that we can use completely. This one, sorry, I lost my place. One of the big reasons for this is when we go out into the community and we perform like a DUI arrest. What we've been doing for many years now is leaving a vehicle on the side of the road. And what I would argue is that we're opening ourselves to liability when we do that, because it's not the owner that's leaving that vehicle there, it's us. And if someone else comes along and hits that vehicle, we're on the hook for it because we're the ones that left it there. And so I really feel that for those reasons, towing is very important. And then for other reasons, you know, we have abandoned vehicles here in the city that are a constant problem. We get a lot of calls. You guys might even get calls about it. And we're trying to figure out how to deal with these things. So just having some sort of budget available to tap into to handle those things, I think will be very helpful. So that's why I asked for those. The next one I wanted to point out with PD is 7302, that's travel and subsistence. I've requested an increase here for two reasons. Number one, just simply increased costs of sending people to training, and also I've requested to be able to offer moving reimbursement for department employees as an incentive. Just so you know, I also asked for an incentive pay program, but it unfortunately needed to be cut, and rightfully so. You know, right now with the budget balance issues that we're having, maybe now's not the time, but I was hoping to get us into a better position where we're competing with Homer. I wanted to match their incentive program, and I don't know if you guys have seen, but the Kenai Police Department and Alaska State Troopers are offering massive incentive bonuses right now, which is going to make it extremely hard for the police department to compete. So, you know, it is what it is. Beyond that, the very next one is 7303, education and training. This line item needs to be talked about with 7309, which is police academy training. As you may or may not know, the Alaska Police Standards Council is no longer funding municipalities to send officer recruits to the academy. The state has cut that out of their budget. So that leaves us on the hook for it. This year, we were projected to send 2 people. We were hoping to get 2 people ready to go this year to go to the academy. It didn't end up happening, but we're preparing to send 2 in the February academy. This year's numbers were about $13,000 per person. So, you know, next year we're looking at about 26,000 roughly. It may go up a little bit, but this became an interesting item for me because we added money into the budget. We revisited the budget here at council, added money back into that line item, education and training, but with the intention of getting these people to the academy. But had we sent both of them to the academy, we would have had nothing left to train other officers, which we're required to do by law, and we have to do that. So we have to give certain amounts of training to the police officers. So what I wanted to do here is separate these 2 out so that we can see this is the money that we're going to set aside for the academy, and then when you refer back to 7303, this is the money that we're going to use for our existing officers and to some degree dispatchers as well, because dispatchers and patrol officers come from the same PD budget. And is there anything there? Any questions? That's the main things.
I'll just speak in support of, I would like that we have a well-trained police force and dispatchers, so I think we need to make it a priority. So I appreciate you pulling those expenses out and highlighting them. Go ahead.
So I see this is an $800,000 increase over 2019 actual. And Chief, you explained that on line 7009 was a significant increase because you pulled it out of where it was sprinkled all over. But I show an increase on every single line of this budget except for 2. So where did that big jump come out of?
So one of the biggest ones, for example, 7217, small tools and equipment. And if you look at the 2021 amended budget, we jumped that one up, clear up to $41,000, and the year-to-date actuals are $34,057. We're dropping that one down to $8,000. So that's one of those areas where we were spending, you know, contracted money in a line item that wasn't contracted services. So that one, we pulled that and moved it up, and that one alone is a good sized chunk of what we're trying to fix.
So, and this is one of the departments where in 2020, the COVID funds were applied, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. So when I say $800,000, I'm not looking at 2020 or 2021, I'm looking at 2019 actuals, right? And so what was it what changed in the small tools and equipment in 2019 that we, in 2020, that we started to budget for? You mentioned a handful of contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of those contracts are new as of 2021?
So I want to, I don't want to put a pin in it exactly, but I want to say that the dispatch training contracts may be brand new. And there's other stuff that we've added.
So I think a big jump between 2019 is, didn't we add an officer position in the 2020-2021 budget?
And that's going to be a big
Yeah.
piece to this.
Madam Mayor, also, this goes back to some of the positions were unfunded. In 2019, the ones that were not filled were actually unfunded, and in 2022, they're all funded and are all filled. So there's the funding for all positions in there.
I have going back to revenues, it's just a curiosity to me that the dispatch, 4203 and 4204, those dispatch revenues have not changed since 2016. How does something not change ever in this world?
Madam Mayor, if I may, that is a discussion that actually area city managers, Kenai Peninsula Borough City Managers are talking about, because as you know, because you were on the Borough Assembly, that there is the E911 money collected. However, it does not appear to any of the cities that the actual full amount is being distributed as it should be. So it is something that we are hoping, we are not just hoping, we are going to address together in figuring out who is receiving. We're all receiving about the same amount, which doesn't make sense. So the borough does have some dispatch, and they have needs to keep portions of that, but they receive multi-millions every year, and yet the cities are getting maybe 300,000 of that. So that is definitely something that I need to address.
There's the state dispatch and the KPB, and
Right.
neither have changed. Yeah.
The KPB is probably the one that I would say is more tangible. We have all the numbers for it. You know, obviously we can get those numbers. The state is a little more tricky with that, but for KPB, we definitely can.
I mean,
It should go up.
yeah, it should go
Absolutely.
up. Nothing
Absolutely.
stays the same for 6 years. I mean,
The 4203 is the special services contract that I bring before council every year. That used to be higher ages ago, when the troopers and us were on the same radio frequencies and that sort of thing. But you know, ALMR came in many years ago now, and then the troopers moved. I don't know, most of you will remember troopers used to be upstairs where the clerk's office is. They ended up moving out of there and all that kind of stuff. And about the time that all that started switching is when that contract dropped down to this $36,000 level, and it's just stayed the same. And I think it's just,
curiosity.
it's interesting. I mean, it's almost like they're being nice to keep that going, because you know, they really don't utilize us very much, not anymore. So it's, yeah, we'll take it.
So if you take the salaries out of the $800,000 increase, it's an increase of $342,000 just in non-personnel costs.
No way, because the non-personnel cost is $346,000. How much did you say?
Non-personnel is 346. Okay, so I might have numbers wrong. Thank you.
Any questions? Are we going on to the jail? And if you have a question, we can go back to, but let's move on to the jail.
If I could, I'd like to do animal control
Oh,
just
yeah,
because
animal
it's,
control, sorry, go ahead.
it's simple and quick.
Yeah.
So, and that'll leave us time for the jail, since that one's probably gonna be interesting. But, so with animal control, there's not a whole lot to really talk about there, not a whole lot of changes. It's, you know, it's a pretty status quo budget. One thing that I did increase is utilities. That's with the new building in mind.
Okay.
So we're just trying to get ahead of that a bit. I don't know that it'll be that much more expensive, because the animal shelter is going to have heat pump technology and stuff like that. I think it's going to be an extremely efficient building, but just in case. Another spot in there is uniform allowance. You may see that it's kind of a significant change. And in 2020, I implemented like an actual uniform for the ACOs. We had in the past not provided them with a set uniform, and so we would have animal control officers running around in civilian clothes and not necessarily identifiable as members of the police department, and I'm just not comfortable with that. So that's why that increase is there. Beyond that, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Where does dog and cat food come out of? What line item?
Yeah, I believe it's operating supplies. So,
That's the one that council requested last cycle to increase
Yeah,
specifically.
because I was just gonna say,
So that's why that's 5,000.
you know, what's proposed is
3875.
Yeah.
so is that enough in there?
I'll increase that to 5,000.
Okay. Because we've had concerns that if they don't get the, right donation, right amount, I mean, they still collect donations, but.
Sure, that makes sense.
And that is quite healthy, the donations. I just had had to call Shelley this week because the donation bin was overflowing. So
Yeah, that's good.
people are doing good.
I'm glad to hear that you are budgeting for utilities at the new building. So, I mean, it's a little bit a rabbit hole, but obviously that's moving forward, and you think that'll be completed by the end of this year? 2022?
No, not this year, no.
2022.
No.
Oh, okay.
This budget
Yeah,
year.
no, this budget year, that's in 2022.
Oh, right. Right now the schedule is November, so,
Okay.
it's out there a ways. But,
So just a couple months of utilities.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know exactly when I don't have experience in a project like this before, so I don't know exactly when do you start turning on heat or
Yeah.
whatever, and I don't know what
Before
that
the
looks
final
like.
bid. Okay,
So,
yeah. So there's potentially a little bit of duplication on purpose.
yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
That's
That
right.
is correct.
go ahead.
Does the animal control not have motor pool rent?
They do not. That has been out of the police department traditionally.
Is there any other questions with animal control? Go ahead.
I guess it's just for the overall department.
Go ahead.
There's no motor pool contribution now with this new proposed.
And any of the general fund.
And before that, it was 50%? Was half the motor pool, like in 2021, amended in 2020?
The total motor pool amount is 315,000 in the general fund. So then the police, I think it was, I want to say it was 60,000 that was in the proposed 2022 for
I
this
guess
year.
I can clarify. In the last 2 years, was the motor pool contribution for the general fund only 50%, half? Or was it fully?
Fully, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Go ahead with one more question. So all the new vehicles that we just approved would have been contributing the higher amount for 2022 based on those vehicles that we upgraded and approved. So is this the point where I say I'd like to see that being paid for? I mean, we're going to upgrade and buy a whole bunch of vehicles. We should find a way to budget for it.
I totally agree with you. However, putting 315,000 back in, I'm not quite sure where I would cut in the other other departments. I mean, I don't disagree. I think that the motor pool should be funded, and I think that's something that this once year should be a stopgap measure, but in the future should be fully funded. I just can't right now find the funds to do so, and I look forward to next year having a finance director where we can start on the process much earlier for budgeting, and to looking really clarifying each fund, each line item, and all of the details of the line item, and then have a overall process of budgeting. So I would love to put the $315,000 back in, I truly would. I don't see it a way to do so at this time.
So the way that I see personally, just from looking at this, is I see increased spending of 160, my correction, in police. And then there's a huge increase, there's $565,000, as we discussed earlier, in fire and building. So I personally would like to look at shaving the spending in those two departments to ensure that our motor pool is being paid into. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do it. I never know when you start speaking of what you want looked at. But my concern is that we increase salaries and we don't know how to pay for it. And we need to figure it out today so that moving forward, we can start planting our dreams of recreation centers and things that go back to the community, and not just increasing spending in departments. Don't get me wrong, I want all of our volunteers to be safe. I totally support funding our police. I'm not there, but I think that we need to figure out how to pay for what we chose to spend.
So what, I guess specifically in these two budgets, would you like to cut?
You want me to go line item?
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Can I ask a question before we get into all that? So, if I understand this right, everybody's paying into the motor pool fund a certain amount?
Correct.
And there's a formula that figures out how much they pay? So the police department, it looks like they paid $50,000 in 2020 actual, $50,000 in 2021 amended. Well, for 2021 actual, it says $49,014. So, for some reason before that, there's nothing in that fund for the police department, and then we took it out. But I mean, all the departments are paying into this fund, right?
Those
Most
have
years,
equals, yes.
depending.
So the 16-17 and the 18-19 budget cycles, it was all taken out of the general fund only as a measure of balancing the general fund budget. 20 and 21 was the first year we were able to put that back in, and we wanted to keep it in this year, but we were right back where we were.
Okay, well, so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is we put this money in a pool to be able to purchase these items, these vehicles, right? So we're not in negative in our motor pool because we purchased these police cars.
No, actually, our motor pool is healthy, and tomorrow night, I will have all the motor pool figures for you. It is a healthy fund, so I think that a stopgap measure for 1 year is not, is okay. I don't think it should be a prolonged measure, I really don't. But for 1 year, it is okay for that fund.
So why don't we do this after we're gonna have a follow-up meeting after these first 4 work sessions. So people, I think it would be easier if people have specific items that they either wanna increase or cut, if they email those to the city manager, and then we would have those to discuss it maybe as part of that last meeting.
On November 1st.
On November 1st.
So, just because, I mean, council changes, administration changes, you get told what you should and shouldn't do as a council member, but I've always been told in the past, it's not up to me to go through line items and start cutting things. It's up to me to say, I mean, the best thing that I understood I could say as a council member is either cut the budget by 10% or find a way to pay for the motor pool, and it's administration's choice to pay the line items. I don't wanna start cutting people's line items. I mean,
Well,
I
yes, I mean, so the other thing is we can't make any decisions tonight, but is there a head nodding to look to the city manager to fully fund the motor pool this year?
No, no. I think personally,
Go ahead.
I think you're doing the right thing because the precedent has been set before. The motor pool fund is healthy. We need the things in the fire department, I think. So I'm totally on the other side. I think we should go with what you got, so. I mean, that will be ultimately, I guess, a vote, but just so you know, there's conflicting opinions.
Go ahead.
so I just have to say that we raised salaries and we created new positions and we bought bigger, better cars. And you can't kick the can down the road and say, we'll figure out how to pay for it in another year. That's not gonna set us up for being healthy. We had a great season from COVID, that's great, we got lucky, but inflation is bound to happen at some point. I personally don't wanna start paying a whole bunch more utilities and hire everything else because we kicked a can down the road. When I first got on council, whatever year that was, we had to increase everything by 10, 20%, 15% because all of past councils had kicked the can down the road. And then we were the bad guys because we were the ones that had to come up with a way to pay
So
for
I'll
everything
just
that was
check
already
in the
there.
enterprise funds, are they contributing to the motor pool? So in those enterprise funds where there's ratepayers, they still have the motor pool funding.
Correct, it's just the general fund, it does not.
If administration could, just for a refresher, at one of the next meetings, just bring forward what we increase the overall general fund salaries in, what that number is, that would be really helpful. I believe it was,
I think it's in here, but it is in here. However, there has been some updates. There really haven't been any updates on salaries, but that amount is in here on page 13 of the original budget. And the increase is $866,000. And that's general fund, excuse me, that's the general fund.
So, and that is including the PERS, correct? Is that salaries only, or does that
That is
include?
salaries, let me verify something.
Does that include the
I'm
health
pretty sure that's
insurance?
salaries only. What I will do for tomorrow night, I will have that information. I'm not confident because there's been changes, so I'm not confident in this page. So I will have that information for you tomorrow night. I'd rather make sure I'm 100% confident of the information before I just quote it.
the other thing that I'd just like to point out in the general fund, just why the attention is there, is the contribution to the chamber is way less because of the way that we base the years on, even though we have the extra revenues this year. So that's a big gap that we're not taking into consideration either. So I just wanted to, I mean, there's a lot of gaps, and someone's gonna have to deal with this eventually, whether it's us or the next round of people.
I do agree that there are gaps. I absolutely agree with you. And I have some concerns about that as well, you know, that I don't like doing a stopgap measure on motor pool, but as you can see, and I will give you better numbers tomorrow, that there's a large increase in salaries, and I do believe that most of it is because the positions are funded. They were not funded in previous years, not fully funded somewhere in previous years, so that didn't give the complete picture of actual salaries, the amount of salaries, and so this year the complete picture is there, and there is an increase for that.
And it's just a reminder of how expensive personnel is in general. I mean, it's like 75% or so of our general fund budget. But no one wants to, you know, obviously nobody wants to cut jobs, so we have to figure out where.
Part of the reason the last budget looked so good was because those non-filled salaries weren't included, and that was sort of being hailed as the way to do it, but that's a kicking down the road
Right.
too.
Right.
And
now
now
that
we're being
doing-
real,
Yes.
Yeah.
and we can still do it, so I think that's. a
Now
positive.
that we have all the costs and we're actually filling positions, which is great for operations, it truly is, and that's what we want, then the costs are real as well, so that's
That's an
the
honest
difference.
budget.
Let's go to the jail.
Which of ours?
Yeah, let's get to the jail.
Okay.
So before we start, Chief, you'll notice at the bottom in red, I put loss, and that's the loss per year. And as you can see, some years are actual loss amounts, and then the projected for 2022.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, this particular budget for me is kind of hard to wrap my head around because it's the only one of my divisions that is supposed to be funded by a contract. And so, as I look at this and I try to imagine where to put the money, it gets a little complicated, I guess. And a big problem with this is the state hasn't changed this contract since 2015. It's never been adjusted for inflation of any kind. When we reach out to them, we get silence. Both myself and the city manager have tried to establish contact with the Commissioner of Department of Corrections. We're not having any luck. I mean, like literally no response. And now we've tried this political route, and I think we absolutely want to thank Representative Carpenter for the help that he's given us, and in trying to establish a rapport with the Commissioner of DOC. That hasn't met with any success either. And this sort of latest thing is the Commissioner's office, which is where we would expect to have this dialogue go on, has now moved controls, quote unquote, control of the jail down to probations, which, for me personally, I have no idea how someone in probations who's under the Commissioner is in a position to negotiate a contract like this, So it's very frustrating. One of the things that I've brought to City Manager Bauer is it's a 6-position jail. We have a jail supervisor and 5 corrections officers. We currently have one vacancy. The numbers that are in front of you are, of course, what it would look like if it's fully funded. But one of the things that I've suggested is that we intentionally not fill that 6th position, which
Is the savings about 117,000?
Even with overtime? Like even with those other folks needing overtime?
that's a great question, and it's one that I haven't had a chance to talk to City Manager Bauer over yet, because you're absolutely correct in where you're going with that. So if someone gets sick, if someone, and our employees are absolutely going to have to take leave, if that happens, what does it look like? And the answer is we may or may not incur overtime. So long as it's one gone at a time, we can move the other 4 to 12-hour shifts and, potentially incur 4 hours of overtime per pay period per person, which is pretty manageable, especially since they do have their own overtime budget, which we can tap into. So the answer is if we control it, we'll be good. If we lose 2 people, things get crazy quick. And so, that's gonna, that would add up very quickly. You know, the hope would be that we don't lose 2 at a time for any reason. You know, I think it's something that we can manage so long as we stay on top of it. So I think it's a good option for us while we're trying to figure out how to negotiate this situation with a contract that's so severely underfunded that, you know, I mean, the taxpayers are looking at a $500,000 hit. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So, beyond that, the line items themselves, I don't really have much to comment on. Didn't really change a whole lot there. I think it should be pretty much in line with what we've had before. You know, what questions do you have?
Well, since the subject got brought up, you know, I don't know, I think political pressure is where we're at right now, so I don't know if there's phone calls that I need to be in on as the mayor. Sometimes that opens doors, or I don't know where probation's, if they're in Anchorage, if I need to make a trip to support our administration, I'm more than happy to do that. But we need to make sure that we're being very aggressive addressing this. And I know our lobbyists have been helpful, but any other suggestions?
When I spoke last to, they call themselves DP3, Department of Probation's Parole and some other P word. And I told them that I could not recommend that we keep the jail open based on this kind of deficit, so hopefully that we're gonna close the jail. Still nothing.
You know, we need to probably have a work session or something regarding this, and maybe get some correspondence going back and forth, or invite them to a work session to explain themselves. But I'm happy to help be involved with it on that. So council now has a suggestion before, just looking for head nods, or you're just letting us know that you're gonna look at that, potentially the one position, to see if you can get it closer in line?
Right, exactly. That's what I would like to do is, as you can tell, I don't like to underfund any positions because I want to show the true picture. So this would be very intentional to underfund this position, because we will not fill it. If we do not fund it, we won't be filling that position. If, as the chief stated, if there were 2 positions, say that we did lose another jailer for whatever reason, there would be additional overtime, but actually that would be somewhat budgeted because the salary would be budgeted. The original second person salary would be budgeted, so the overtime won't have as big of an impact on that. But we'll take a look at the overtime as well for the adjustment that needs to be made. But I do plan for the next, for the November 1st document, to not fund 1 position in the jail. That's my plan.
And have that be indicated.
One other thing, and I brought this tonight. I'm not exactly sure. I put this together just before our meeting, and so how to get this to all of you, I'm not exactly sure what the process is. But if I can give it to can I give it to the clerk and have her give you copies? Would that be all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I brought is an article and a Supreme Court decision. So in 2003, Kotzebue was having basically this exact same problem, and they decided to actually sue the state. And so it ended up going to Superior Court, and Superior Court interpreted the laws of the state, and they found in Kotzebue's favor, and they decided that yes, the state is responsible for funding these contracts. So there was an appeal. It ended up in the Supreme Court. You can read about it. The whole opinion is there from the Alaska Supreme Court, and I was trying to wrap my head around it today, and it would be, I think, great if we had our attorney brief us about it, but the gist of it was that most of the Superior Court's decisions stood, at the Supreme level, and some of it ended up coming backwards a little bit on Kotzebue. But by and large, they did win, and they were able to get not only the money that they were owed at that time, but back money as well. So money that they had been owed. And so I definitely want you guys to be aware of this. I encourage you to take a look at this, do your own due diligence, and see what you think. But I really feel that it's a very strong option for us. And then the next pieces to that would be, what do we do in the meantime? Do we want to keep the jail operational and pursue litigation? Do we want to close it and pursue litigation? Do we want to close it and just walk away from the relationship? You know, how do you want to proceed with this? And we have options. Or do we want to, you know, pay this and put up with this? But, you know, I certainly don't recommend that option. I think it's a terrible option. And for my part of this, I intend to, and I know City Manager Bauer has already tried some of this as well, but I intend to reach out to the other 14 community jails who are also going through this exact same thing right now. And I think that if we can garner some support from these folks, we would have a lot stronger position collectively than we will by ourselves. So
I have a question within the context of the budget. So is it administration's recommendation to at least budget with operations as usual for this time? Or are we at a place where you'll make any sort of, the only recommendation you'll make is to take that one employee down potentially?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I intend on, yes, continuing, because I do think this is ultimately a policy decision by the council what to do with the jail. So I would recommend the operational budget stay intact, just reducing the one jailer position.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, good background. Go ahead.
Just a real quick question before I read that. How long did it take through that whole court battle from beginning to end with Constable?
I want to say, you know, with all the back and forth and appeals and all that sort of thing, it took a few years.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a quick fix.
Right, it's not going to happen immediately.
Just to say.
Okay, so before we go on to the next healthcare, are there any public comments? Does anyone would like to make a public comment? Sure. Thank you.
I followed the budget for a while as a police officer. One thing I want to appreciate with Chief Nichols, they're transparent. Like before, under administrator, you would see training and education kind of there, and everyone would think the police officers were getting a fair amount of training. It wasn't really the case. Now it is. So I want to say thank you to the chief on that.
Thank you. Good comment. Are there any other public comments? Okay, thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda is healthcare.
The healthcare is, the numbers have not changed from your original packet, and that is starts on page 100. With the next, an overview of the healthcare funds, how it's the 1% of the taxes. So on page 101, then begins the budget itself. And actually for this, I'm going to have Sam take this over.
So starting with the healthcare enterprise fund, which is just the hospital. Yes.
Because to reiterate, we no longer have any contributions to the Seward Community Health Center.
Correct. We do not budget for their own personal revenue. We do budget for their investment interest earnings from the money that we hold for the bonds. So that's the only revenue you're going to see there. Expenditure-wise, 7809 pass-through payments. We just assume status quo of the capital contribution from the past years. and this is just an annual check that we write to the hospital for capital needs. So that you'll see in 2018 it was very high, and that was when we appropriated at $1.3 million for the CT scanner. So $687,500 is what it was budgeted in 2021, so we just kept that number there. And then depreciation is for the building itself and the capital there, and then the debt service.
Why the jump up on depreciation? Is that because of that CT scanner, or?
Yes, and whatever capital they also purchase with that contribution.
And we haven't seen their monthly financials, and then we kind of expecting them to come in and do an annual presentation.
We
Yeah.
have not received their financials.
Correct.
We've tried to get them, but we have not received them. They were going to be in your council packet, but as you can tell, they're not.
But I know, can you talk about, there was a gap in millions of dollars of what we owed them, and that's been closing.
Yeah, so this, the newer administrator, Robert Rang, has been doing a great job in closing the gap for their liabilities.
It's the liabilities.
Yeah.
Do we know what that looks like now?
So, a few years ago, I want to say probably 18, it was at $7 million,
Yeah.
and last time I checked, he had it below 2.
And how is he doing that?
I
Bed.
haven't talked to him about it, we were actually gonna
Well,
set
yeah,
up
I
a-
know, that's why I would like to see if it's the swing beds or if it's the Mountain Haven beds. I kinda wanna know if it's because the consensus should be paying their bonds, should be the bond revenue. So that liability money must be coming from multiple.
Right, and I think it's more related on the hospital side.
The
than
hospital.
Mount Haven side. But we were gonna meet with the administrator and the CFO in the next few weeks when we have time, and kind of get on the same page.
Yeah,
Since the CFO is also fairly new.
Yeah, so, cause when that turnover, when that happens, we need to know how they're being successful and hold them to that.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's no questions on the hospital side, we can go to Mount Haven.
I maybe have one more question on the hospital side. So my question would be, I think this is a number of years away, but if the Seward Community Health Center, does leave that building and builds their own building, does that make it more of a liability for the city on our expenses, or does that remain with Providence?
No, that remains with Providence operationally.
But then if they're low on their operations, we might have to help match that with our 1% sales tax?
I don't see that happening, I think it'd be very minimal,
Okay,
but possibly, yeah.
okay.
In discussions with Craig Ambrosiani, sorry, don't say his name correctly, CHC desires to be away from the city, to not be a part of this anymore. And we had actually, Craig and I had actually had discussions on making that happen, and would have brought that forward to each board. But there is a HRSA grant still in place, and because we are on that HRSA grant, until they're done with the HRSA grant, then we can't break away. But as soon as the grant is done, we're gonna try to break, so that way we won't have any responsibility in CHC.
Thank you.
Do we have any responsibility other than having our name on papers with them?
Besides being the grantee and actually receiving the funds and passing them through them, I don't think we have any more ties to that.
So it's just providing the administrative.
Yeah, because we were the original applicant, co-applicant for the grant. And so when the grant comes up for renewal, they were gonna apply on their own without us. And that's when we would split.
So payroll wise, health insurance wise, all of those, they're on their own.
They're on their own plan, they're not on our accounting system anymore, they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's really great to see the promises followed through.
Yeah.
Because I remember being like, another one, another business, and so
Yeah, that
kudos to
that
them
was the
for making it
intent, too,
happen.
So that was good to see.
And they expressed that the next HRSA grant, they don't want us involved at all. They're gonna apply on their own, so everything's 100% on their own, so.
Great.
Which is encouraging.
Last question. Are they paying administrative fees for us passing the grants through?
No, not at this time. But it's not a lot of administrative work to do that.
Okay.
Mountain.
Mountain Haven. Mountain Haven, so the first line item is the patient revenue. And this gets paid to us directly monthly based on their patient revenue in order to make the bond payments as well as capital. So we were, I believe, just looking at historical actuals. We don't actually get the budgeted revenue from Mountain Haven directly. We just look at their history. Expense-wise, depreciation obviously is the main expense on that expensive building. And then the debt service, interest, and principal, as you can see, is about $1.5 million per year.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
when does that, is it a bond?
Yes.
When does that close or end?
2033, at the end of this year, the balance will be 14.3 million.
2033. Can I ask another question in regards to 2033? I was listening to the budget session that I didn't attend, and I heard 2023 and 2033 for when the PERS contribution ends. Which one was it?
It's also 2033.
Okay, thank you.
I wish it was 20.
I know, I got all excited when I heard that. I was like, dang, one more year, but, okay. Thank you.
Is there any question regarding Mountain Haven? Okay, so I'll look, are there any comments from the public on any topic that they'd like to pertain to the budget?
Skip's not here.
Are there any comments from council? I had one thing that I was hoping we could at least take a look at. You know, it's been brought up before and someone brought it up with me again today. Fed tax credits for on-time return.
Yeah.
So there's always a 10%, you know, the borough gives you a credit for sales tax on-time return. So, you know, I'd like to look at, go ahead.
5%.
Yeah, I'd like to look at 5%.
Up
Just
to
see,
$1,000, yeah.
yeah, let's just see how that would really impact the budget.
Okay.
Just to look at. Go ahead.
And on that, it would be really great, I know this doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but if the city bed tax were due the same time as the borough bed tax. The way our policy is wrote, you have to guess which day it's gonna be. You have to really know code. Or read your tax return every single time you get it to know what the date it's due is.
So 5%, and then did you want a cap on that? Because the borough does a cap of $1,000.
Yeah.
I think we should just mirror what the
Yeah,
borough
well,
does.
yeah, let's look, but I think theirs is 10%, but let's at least see what a 5% would get us to try to get it in there.
We'll bring both 5 and 10.
And that is a revenue, excuse me, is a general fund
Yeah.
expense? Okay.
And that was a couple people contacting me. Sure, go ahead.
Again, I was listening to the meeting, there were some parts that I couldn't hear. Did you guys were talking about rescheduling something for November 1st, but then I was having a hard time following.
So we were looking at the week of November 1st for an additional finance budget work session. And I don't know, I think you were gonna bring in.
I think we landed on November 1st at 6 PM.
Okay.
Is what
Okay,
my
great.
notes state.
Thank you.
So let's make sure that gets on everyone's calendars and gets, the other thing would be, so tomorrow night we'll be having the electric department?
Correct, so the electric department has been added to tomorrow night's.
Okay, that was my next question, thank you.
And that was
else for the good of the order? Go ahead.
Will electric go at the end of the agenda or at the beginning tomorrow? Can I prefer or suggest that it goes at the beginning, just because I'd like to get through that before we look at the CIP?
Yeah.
Or at least place CIP last, wherever electric falls.
All directors will be here at 6, so then however you guys want to.
Okay.
One more
Go ahead.
question, if I may. Madam Mayor, if you could please, or as a council, just suggest what is the best way to bring forward, I mean, I know that I brought forward a suggestion, there were 2 people that said absolutely not, but we didn't actually vote on it. So I've just always been curious, when you have budget suggestions, what's the best way? Do you do it in the work session, here with everybody? Do I email administration and say, hey, these are suggestions, bring them before the council, see what people think, like?
You know, I guess with this group, that very last meeting, if there's additional council suggestions, we can bring them up. If there's questions that you have or numbers that's maybe not, I won't say not too much work, but I mean, if it's something that administration can help you look at, or if you have a suggestion, and then if it's something that might not be universally adopted, we could talk about it at the work session, and administration can get their take a temperature on if they think it's something that most of us want to pursue and make their decision, and then the night of the budget, if there's something that didn't get included, you could make amendments. So all
Got
those
it.
things.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yep, that helps a lot, thank you.
Because I might have a suggestion, or someone else on the administration might want to have a suggestion with something specific that they'd like to see or not see, and see how it goes. Is that acceptable? All right, so with that, we will adjourn at 7:46.